Let's catch you up on the latest news from the GM meetings up next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Thursday, November 7th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Chris Towers, and lots of interesting news and notes coming out from the GM meetings. And we will start with Shohei Ohtani, who suffered a torn labrum in his left shoulder in the World Series, and he underwent surgery this week. The Dodgers expect that he'll be ready for spring training. Chris, a month ago, it seemed like a slam dunk, no-brainer. Ohtani is the first overall pick in drafts for next year. What do you think now?
I think you can still draft him first overall. I do not think it is a clear one of one. There's nobody else in the discussion, but I didn't think that necessarily beforehand, because even before this injury, knowing Shohei Ohtani was likely going to be pitching all of the 2025 season, as long as he stays on the mound, I didn't expect another 50 plus stolen bases. I was expecting a big step back in terms of his speed. And so he was the number 7 player in 2023 while stealing 20 bases in 135 games. I think that puts him in the first overall player discussion, but it doesn't change it a ton for me unless we get to spring training and it looks bad, or I hesitate to bring up the comp, but Cody Bellinger, the last time the Dodgers won the World Series, also separated his shoulder. I can't remember. Did he have surgery that offseason?
Think so.
And like reworked his swing as a result. And like, if we get some kind of discussion about that, then it might be like, okay, he's not the number 1 player. If you still want to take Shohei Ohtani overall number 1, I think that's fine. I might lean Bobby Witt now.
Okay. Braves president of baseball operations, Alex Anthopoulos, said it does not seem like Ronald Acuna or Spencer Strider will be ready for opening day. Obviously, that's very ambiguous. It's kind of open-ended. They could miss the first week. They could miss the first 2 or 3 months. Like, we just don't know right now. It's very early in the process. Chris, some early ADP numbers that we have Acuña as like a late first-round pick. Do you think he should remain there? Should he drop down a little bit? And what do you think about Strider as well?
I think it probably depends on your personal level of risk tolerance with Ronald Acuna. We know he has number 1 overall player upside. I expect him to be back in April, given the timeline from when he tore his ACL the last time and when he came back. It's really hard to say right now, though, because it's, if there's a 15% variance in the projected timetable 6 months out, that's a lot different than a 15% variance a month out. So if you want, like we talked about in the full episode, I think there's a clear top 15 at among all players, but they're all hitters especially. So if you wanted to put Ronald Acuna 15 out there and say, I'm just not going to draft him, I'm worried about it, he didn't look great the last time he came back from a torn ACL, I think that's perfectly reasonable as well. I think he's also a perfectly viable pick around 10th overall too.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about Strider? Because I know the early ADP is like 85th overall. He went 70th in the first mock draft that we did. I mean, should he drop down to like 100 in that range? What are you thinking on Strider?
Again, it's so far out that I don't know how I want to react. I think my tendency is, like, I think I ranked him as a top 12 starting pitcher when I went through my first round of rankings, and that would put him in like the 4th round. Not going to happen. Seeing how he's getting drafted now, there's just no reason to rank him that high. So I will move him down. I think down to 30th-ish makes sense at starting pitcher. And yeah, 100th-ish overall. That's probably reasonable. Part of it is just we don't know how guys come back from the
internal brace
procedure rather than the ligament replacement. It's a quicker recovery. Is it a better recovery? I think we're still in the very, very early stages of finding that out, especially for pitchers.
Last but not least, Willson Contreras will be the full-time first baseman and DH next season for the St. Louis Cardinals. Ivan Herrera and Pedro Pages will split catcher duties, but this is pretty big news because Contreras is going to see more playing time, more plate appearances than your average catcher, and when he's on the field, he's still been a really, really good hitter, Chris. So I think this kind of cements Contreras at least as a top 7 catcher heading into next season.
I think my initial reaction is he's number 7 with a bullet, right after Cal Raleigh, who obviously has a strong track record over the last couple of years of being a 30-homer guy. I think you could make a case for Willson Contreras as high as 4th, ahead of Salvador Perez, who is older than him, has his own injury history, not quite as extensive as Willson Contreras, but look, man, Willson Contreras has an xWOBA in the top 10 percentile of all hitters. Each of the past 3 seasons, he was top 10 in WOBA among all hitters last season. He might just be a viable first base option for fantasy, let alone a must-start catcher. So I really do think there's a chance that Willson Contreras is one of the biggest edges you can have at any position in 2025 if he stays healthy.
All right. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we will be back again on Saturday. Bye-bye.